And so, hello there, and welcome back to another Nice to Movies podcast. And in these podcasts, I talk all things music and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm finally talking about it. I'm talking about my most anticipated movie of this year, which is, of course, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I'll be giving my first thoughts on that movie very shortly in this podcast. But before I do that, I should say what I say at the start of every podcast I do, that if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello there to my viewers, but you prefer to listen to these podcasts, well, you can at Nice to Movies on Spotify. And if you are already listening on Spotify, hello there to podcast listeners, then you can also check this podcast out visually on my YouTube channel and Nice to Movies on that platform as well. Likewise, wherever you may be watching or listening to the podcast, don't forget to like, subscribe on this podcast if you enjoy it, and give me some feedback on things to improve on in future podcasts as well, because feedback is always much appreciated. Also, I should say, and fans of the channel, or fans of my latest podcast, should I say, know what I'm going to say here. It is still the ongoing saga of hay fever. Yes, I have hay fever quite badly right now. I first spoke about my troubles with hay fever in my podcast on Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and those troubles have continued. Although my hay fever isn't as bad today, I might still sound quite bummed up throughout this podcast, and also I might be sniffling throughout this podcast, and I'm feeling a bit under the weather because of hay fever as well, because that's what it does to you. So, you know, if I'm not on top form, I do apologise, but other than that, this should be a very fun podcast to listen to and or watch. So, let's get into it. My thoughts on Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I should say this is going to be a spoiler-free podcast. I'm not getting into any spoilers in this podcast today. I'm probably going to do a spoiler podcast about this movie within the next couple of days on this channel. But for now, no spoilers in my view of this movie. Not in this podcast anyway. So, what is there that hasn't been said about my excitement and my anticipation for this movie already? You know, just before I get into my first thoughts on the film, I do want to quickly reiterate how excited I've been for this movie. I've been, like, I can't even describe how excited, I can't describe to you how excited I've been for this film. I have been looking forward to it for so long. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was the first film I remember watching at the cinema, and so this is almost a full circle. Watching another Indiana Jones movie at the cinema was really something. It was a really crazy experience, and you can see on the channel recently I've been reviewing the Indiana Jones movies, and I spoke a bit about Young Indiana Jones a couple of days ago now as well, to show you my anticipation for this new Indiana Jones film, to show you how much I love this franchise. It's up there with Star Wars for me. I mean, Star Wars I probably like more as an overall franchise, but the Indiana Jones franchise is, I hold so dearly to me as well. And the prospect of having another great Indiana Jones adventure really excites me. And you have Harrison Ford returning as Indiana Jones. You have John Williams returning to score this movie. You have John Rhys Davies returning as Sal in this film. That was confirmed in the trailers. You know, all these elements got me really excited. And sure, Spielberg wasn't coming back to direct this fifth Indiana Jones installment, but you had James Mangold coming in to replace him. James Mangold, who is a very talented director. Don't believe me? Just listen to the films he's directed. Identity, Copland, Girl Interrupted, Night and Day, Walk the Line, 3:10 to Yuma, Kate and Leopold, The Wolverine, Logan, and lately Ford v Ferrari. That was a film he directed before this one, before Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. So he's clearly a versatile director in a very similar fashion to Spielberg. Spielberg has directed loads of films, all these different types of genres, and so has James Mangold. You know, if we couldn't have Spielberg directing this new Indiana Jones movie, I thought that James Mangold coming in was a great decision. And, I mean, there were so many elements which really excited me about this movie, and also I thought the trailers were great, and I thought the marketing was great, and I really felt the love for this franchise as well when I was at Star Celebration a couple of months back, and I saw people dressed as Indiana Jones, and I saw this whole Indiana Jones exhibit there as well, which really excited me. And yeah, the love that this film was getting at Star Celebration, it got me even more excited. And seeing these trailers, seeing everything just come together in the lead up to this movie, I've been so excited for it. Even though it got mediocre reviews when it first premiered at Cannes a couple of months back, or about a month ago now, or whatever it was, I still was very excited to see it because it's a new Indiana Jones movie. Good or bad, I just want to see it. I just want to see it. You know what I mean? I just really wanted to see it. And so yesterday, I watched the film for the first time at 9:15 at this IMAX in Manchester, which is about an hour away from where I live. And so I travelled to go and see it, which I don't usually do with movies unless I really want to see them, because I have a cinema more local. And then I did actually see the film for the second time at my local cinema with Lewis, my good friend that I had on the podcast a couple of days ago now, when I talked about my anticipation for this new movie on that podcast as well. And so yes, I've seen the film twice. And here are my thoughts on Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. That was a weird thing to say, the fact that I've actually seen the movie now and I'm about to deliver my thoughts. But here are my thoughts on Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I enjoyed this movie, and I'm really happy that I did. It's not brilliant, it's not great, and it's not got the same spark that the first three Indiana Jones movies have. But it's one of those films that the more I think about it, the more I like it, the more it really starts to grow on me. Like, I've seen it twice, and the first time I saw it was a very overwhelming experience. So I was like, oh my god, I'm watching another Indiana Jones movie in the cinema. This is insane. And then the second time I saw it, I sat there and going, okay, yeah, the insanity watching another Indiana Jones movie in the cinema, that's kind of gone away now. I can just watch the film for what it is. And although it does have some problems, which I will talk about in non-spoiler fashion a bit later, but also some spoiler problems as well, which I can't get onto in this podcast because I'm not talking about spoilers, even though the film has its problems, I liked it, and I'm really happy that I did. And the reason I liked this new Indiana Jones movie is because it felt like an old Indiana Jones movie. It felt like what an old Indiana Jones movie should be like. It doesn't have the same sort of action sequences that the first three Indiana Jones films have. Nor does it have the same type of action sequences you get in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And that's what I liked about it. The fact that there is action in this film, but it's all believable. It's all grounded in reality. And I love how this film approached the idea of Indiana Jones being at this age, and love how it tackled that idea, and it went head first doing so, because that's what this film is about. And I read a review that said this movie, well, I didn't read the review, I saw the title review that said this is a dark and depressing finale to the Indiana Jones franchise. Yes, it is dark and depressing in some moments, but that makes perfect sense for this character in this movie, and that's why I liked it. I wish I could go into spoilers, but I'm not going to. I'm going to save that for a podcast in the next couple of days. But, the moments in this movie which are really dark and deal with the fact that Indy's at this age now, but they do it really well. The fact this is a venture that we came to love in the 80s, watching him in movies in the 80s where the original three Indiana Jones films came out, when we watched him, beat up Nazis, beat up Tuggy warriors in an underground temple and save slave children. This person that we came to know and love, how does all that stuff that happened with him in the past affect him now? And I thought that this film dealt with that really well. Actually, I think that it dealt with that exceptionally. That's one thing in the film which I absolutely adored. Now, I don't love the film though, and one of the reasons I don't love the movie is because I don't think it's quite as confident in its direction and its storytelling and in its overall execution as it could have been. This Indiana Jones movie is the first one not to be directed by Spielberg. And I was fine with that, because one of my big problems with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was that it was directed by Spielberg. Check out my podcast on that if you haven't already. But one of the things I say in that podcast is that I don't think Spielberg's heart was in that fourth Indiana Jones movie. I think he moved on to other things, and you can tell. It's not that it's a badly directed movie, it's just not got the same tightness in its direction that the first three Indiana Jones films have, that the first three Indiana Jones movies have. And in this movie, though, the directing from James Mangold, it's not bad, I'm not saying that, but the action sequences don't have the same handle and the same gravitas that the action sequences in the previous four Indiana Jones movies have. Well, mainly the first three Indiana Jones movies, not so much the fourth one, which have action sequences which, extend, which are quite far-fetched, and you're sitting there in disbelief, like, I can't believe in any of this, because some of the action sequences, particularly the one that takes place in the warehouse at the start of Crystal Skull, doesn't really work with Indy, running along the wood at the top of the warehouse. It's not a great action sequence, because I don't believe in it, and clearly that's just a Harrison Ford stunt double doing the action sequence. Yeah, it's not a good action sequence. But in this film, like I said before, the action sequences are more believable, but they just don't have the same. The directing isn't there with them, though. I wasn't enthralled by the action sequences as much as I wanted to be, and that leads me on to another problem in this film, another problem I have with this movie, which is the opening. The opening didn't grab me as much as I wanted it to, because I don't think James Mangold really had the confidence on the action sequence in the movie. Where I think James Mangold really shines with his direction in this film is in the dialogue scenes, where it's just two characters talking, and there's certain moments in this movie, one moment in particular which I'm thinking about right now, but I can't say because it's a spoiler, but there's one moment in this movie, and if you've seen the film, you probably know what scene I'm talking about. It's towards the end, that's all I'll say there, it's towards the end. There's one scene which I thought was really powerful, and just the way he directed that scene was just so subtle, and it was so poignant, just his camera placement. I think that James Mangold did a great job with directing the dialogue scenes of the film, just not so much the action sequences. I'm not saying the action sequences in the film are bad, they just didn't grab me as much as, say, the tank chase in Last Crusade, or say the minecart chase in Temple of Doom, or the truck chase in Raiders. It's not Spielberg directing, and you can tell, but I do think James Mangold does a good job emulating Spielberg, invoking a lot of the past Indiana Jones moments, that we've come to know and love. So I do think James Mangold does a good job, just not a great job, and I think that's particularly noticeable with the action sequences, although there's not loads of action sequences in this film. It's more of a character study, actually. That's what it is, more of a character study about Indiana Jones at this point in his life, and that's why I liked it. You go into this movie, and it's an Indiana Jones movie, sure, but it's not the same Indiana Jones movie that you expect in the 80s. It's an Indiana Jones movie centered around old Indy, and the film relishes that. That's why I liked it. I was engaged in the story because it felt like James Mangold, the director from, he's also a co-writer in this movie. It felt like this was the story he wanted to tell, this story about old Indy and how he's not the same person, and how all of his past adventures have made him into the person he is that we meet in this movie. That felt like the story James Mangold wanted to tell. Not so much the opening. I honestly feel like the opening of the movie, I'm not saying it's bad, but it's not that good either, in my opinion. The opening of the movie felt like the studio was going, have the Nazis back, have Indy fighting the Nazis in World War II back at the start of the movie, just put it in there, come on, put it in. It felt like a studio now from Lucasfilm, and maybe Kathleen Kennedy, I don't know. It felt like a studio note, that, and yet the rest of the movie felt very James Mangold. It felt in the same ballpark as, say, his work in 3:10 to Yuma, or his work in Logan, or some of his work in The Wolverine, and some of his work in, I got something in a Copland as well, and Girl Interrupted, there's a bit of that in there, a bit of identity. He's really good at just character moments. That's what he's really good at. I've noticed that in his movies. He's really good at sequences, not really sequences, but scenes and films where it's just two characters talking, but there's so much going on at the same time between those two characters because of the actors' performances and because of James Mangold's directing. But at the same time, I do wish the opening was better. One thing I was really distracted by in the opening was the de-aged Harrison Ford. I understand why it's in there, and I've got nothing against it. I like the idea of having a flashback to open this movie, to have... I mean, it's weird to say now, young Indy, but it is essentially... I mean, it's kind of young Indy because... No, it isn't really young Indy, though. It's Indy back from around the same... When he was around the same age from the first few movies... back now here at the start of this film, and I like that idea that he's fighting. That I can't speak. That he's fighting Nazis again. You know, at the same time that around the same time that Last Crusade was there, but it didn't grab me like I said before. I was watching the open action sequences. It just felt like he'd been edited multiple times. The rest of the film didn't feel like that. At least it didn't feel like that for me. And yet the open action sequence, the whole opening really, the whole stuff set in 1944, you know, it just felt like it had gone through multiple edits, through multiple people. I mean, it probably had. That's the thing, it's a studio movie, it probably had. But still, you know, the rest of the movie didn't feel like that, which I thought was odd. But I did really like the fact that Bambrugh Castle, I think that's what it's called, yeah, Bambrugh Castle was in the opening of the film, because I visited there a couple of months ago, by the way, just side note here. I visited there a couple of months ago because I remember there was filming at Bambrugh Castle and I was on holiday near there, so I visited there before Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny came out, you know, before Indiana Jones 5 came out, and I was like, oh, this is going to be really cool because, you know, in a couple of months it's going to be really busy after the release of Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny, you know, hoping that Bambrugh Castle would be used in the movie because I know they're shooting there, but sometimes, you know, things can get deleted no matter where the film or whatnot, you know, even though there's a chance it could have been on the delete scenes, I was still excited at the prospect of being on a location where they filmed a new Indiana Jones movie, and I did get there before the release of this new Indiana Jones film, which I think is really awesome. So yeah, I got to visit Bambrugh Castle, and to see it in this film and to see where I walked around the castle was really exciting as well. Like, oh my god, I walked there. I walked where an Indiana Jones film was shot, which was quite excited to watch. But the opening, I think, is my least favourite opening of all 5 movies, which is a shame to say, but it is what it is. You know, I like the rest of the movie quite a lot. I just didn't love the opening. You know, maybe it'll grow on me over time. Maybe it will, maybe it wouldn't. You know, I've been watching the Crystal Skull opening for the first time, loving it, and now, when I say the Crystal Skull opening, I mean everything in the warehouse as well at the start of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and now when I watch the whole stuff in the warehouse, it's really not growing me. If anything, it's done the opposite, you know what I mean? I don't know what the opposite would be there. You know, that's what I kind of think because of hay fever, but you understand what I'm saying. You know, the opening of Crystal Skull has gone down in my liking ever since I first saw it, whilst at the same time, maybe the opposite will happen with the start of this new indie. I don't know. I've only seen the movie twice, but I didn't love the opening both times. But one thing I did love was the performances, and I really liked Phoebe Waller-Bridge in the film. I don't understand people's problem with her. Like, I don't understand the problem with her in this movie. I get if you don't like the actress, I mean, fair enough. I don't understand that really either. I know she did Fleabag before this. I watched 10 minutes of an episode of Fleabag. It just wasn't for me. But I know a lot of people love it, which is great. But at the same time, she's really good in this movie, and she's not just doing her Fleabag performance. She's really not. Like, I read a review coming out of Cannes when this film first premiered that said Phoebe Waller-Bridge does Fleabag in this film. I was like, really? No, it's a bit of a shame. And then you watch it, and she doesn't. She doesn't. They make the character into something unique, and she gives off a performance that I didn't really know she could do, and I thought she was really good in the film, and I enjoyed that character quite a lot. I also really enjoyed the character of Teddy, who is a sidekick. I was about to say kind of a sidekick. No, he is a sidekick throughout the film. He's this young kid, and a lot of me was thinking the first time I watched it, why isn't that character Short Round? He's given a lot of the energy of Short Round, but yeah, that character isn't Short Round. And then when I watched it the second time, I didn't mind about that so much because I'd heard an interview from James Mangold in between what both both times watching the film, and he was talking about how he wanted a kid in this movie to bring in that family audience and that sense of a family adventure. And so I didn't mind that so much, the fact that Teddy wasn't short round, even though he is a poor man's short round, really. But I'm not saying that as a bad thing. I enjoyed that character. I don't know what the actor's called, I haven't looked it up, but I thought the one who played Teddy did a good job, and I enjoyed Phoebe Waller-Bridge as Helena as well. And one thing I really liked was how this Indiana Jones movie as well has his father-daughter relation in the film. Like, Helena isn't Indy's daughter. That's not a spoiler, that's being revealed in the trailers. There's one of the trailers where she says that Indy is her godfather. And that is very much a plot point in this movie. I won't get into that until I talk about this in spoiler terms. That's very much a point in this movie. That's very much an important point. But at the same time, what you get is this father-daughter relationship, which I liked and I enjoyed more than the father-son relationship you had between Indy and Mutt in Crystal Skull. I'm not comparing this movie a lot to Crystal Skull, by the way. I'm doing that because that was the latest Indiana Jones movie. You know, these are the two old man Indiana Jones films, and yet I think this one works better as an old man Indiana Jones film, which I'll talk about very shortly. But I like the whole father-daughter relationship they get in this movie, even though Indy's not Helena's father. He sort of acts like a father at the same time. And yeah, I thought their relationship worked well in the film. I'm not going to say it worked very well, but I liked watching those two on screen together. There was a good chemistry between them two, and a good, you could tell that they got along off screen, which they clearly do if you watch them in interviews. Also, Harrison Ford is great as Indiana Jones in this movie. He is great. It was great seeing him back. Really love seeing him one more time. And you can tell that he has a lot invested in his character. If you just watch him in interviews as well, you can tell that. But you can also tell that in his performance in this film. And it is quite a subtle performance, but also, I think, quite a poignant one. And he's got into this habit of playing a very similar character recently. Like, you watch his character in Shrinking, which is a very funny TV show, by the way, currently on Apple TV Plus, and I'd definitely recommend it if you have Apple TV Plus. But his character in Shrinking is quite grouchy, but then he starts to open up when Jason Segel's character becomes more friendly with him. And that's similar to his performance in this movie as well. I'm not going to say it's the same, because it isn't the same, but it's similar. And I thought that Harrison Ford gave a great performance as old Indiana Jones in this film. And as for Mads Mikkelsen as a villain, Mads Mikkelsen is a tremendous actor, and I was lucky to meet him at Star Celebration. Only for about 30 seconds. I got a photo of him there. You know, photos you have to pay for, and I had to pay a lot for it, but that's neither here nor there. You know, I met him at Star Celebration for about 30 seconds. Dead excited in this movie, and I think Mads Mikkelsen is good in the film. Not in love with the villain. I think the villain's name is Voller. I think it's something like that. Not in love with that character. There's parts of the character that I enjoy, but I also think there was a missed opportunity with that character. Particularly when you get to the big finale of this movie. I felt that there was a bit of a missed opportunity, but I think Mads Mikkelsen is good in the film. Boyd Holbrook, I think that's the actor's name, who plays one of Voller's henchmen. He's quite good in the film as well. And yeah, I think all the performances work. I think all the actors do a good job with their performance in the movie. And going on to this whole idea, how this is a good old man Indiana Jones movie. This is not Crystal Skull, and it's better than Crystal Skull for a lot of reasons. But the biggest reason is that this film, unlike Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, feels grounded in the way it approaches the idea of an old Indiana Jones. Old Indiana Jones in Crystal Skull feels like this fever dream. It feels like this fever dream where you wake up and like, what the hell was that? Whilst old Indiana Jones in this movie feels like reality. It feels like the real version that we would have got of old Indiana Jones. I mean, it feels that we would have got, that we do get. That's the thing. It feels like an old Indiana Jones movie, and I know I keep going on about that, but that's one of the things I really liked about it. You know, don't go into this film expecting the Indiana Jones you got with Raiders of the Lost Ark, Temple of Doom, and Last Crusade. Go into this movie, if you haven't seen it, of course, expecting an old Indiana Jones film. Pardon me there, sorry. I think you'll be satisfied with it, and that's one of the reasons it really worked for me, because I was satisfied by the story that they told. There are problems with the film, but I was satisfied by that, and I was engaged enough in that story. The whole side is what this would eventually be like all these years later, at a much older age. I like how they approached that story headfirst, and I thought that worked. I think there are problems in the storytelling of the film, and I think it could have been more confident with certain ideas, and I do think there are missed opportunities, which of course I can't go on about because I'll be going into spoilers. I'm going to do that in a future podcast, I promise. But I'm just happy it worked for me. And of course, I have to mention the John Williams musical score. I've dedicated a segment of all my past Indiana Jones views to the John Williams musical score, and I have to mention it again here. It's a great score. I will admit, it's my least favourite of all 5 of his Indiana Jones scores, but I don't care. I really don't care about that. I'm just happy that John Williams came back to do another Indiana Jones score, and that it was made before John Williams passed as well, because John Williams is old now, and I love John Williams and his music to pieces. I grew up listening to his music. I still listen to it now daily. In fact, just before I did this podcast today, I was listening to some of his Star Wars scores. You know, I love John Williams so much. Just absolutely adore him. And, you know, he is getting old now. And I was thinking that because this movie had been in production hell for so long, maybe John Williams wouldn't do the musical score because he'd be too old to. But he did the musical score. And the musical score is great. I'm not going to say it's the best Indiana Jones musical score. No, you know, even like I said before, I do think it's his worst musical score of all 5 indie movies. But I still enjoyed it. You know, it's a very nostalgic score. I quote a lot from his previous 4 Indiana Jones scores. A lot from those previous 4 Indiana Jones scores. But as someone who is a fan of those previous 4 Indiana Jones scores, yes, even the score for Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, say it by the movie, love it, hate it, want to write, whatever, you know, even Kingdom of the Crystal Skull has a damn good score. Don't believe me, just listen to it. And particularly listen to the Ants theme as well, which I think is particularly good, or the Adventure Mutt theme from that film. You know, there's a lot of great pieces of music from the Crystal Skull score, and those pieces of music, you know, some of the best pieces of music from the scores from Raiders, Temple of Doom, Last Crusade, and Crystal Skull incorporated into the score of this movie, which I really enjoyed. Also, though, there is some new themes. The theme for Vola I thought was good. It wasn't a great theme, but I thought it worked in the context of the film. And I thought the Helena's theme, though, the theme for Phoebe Waller-Bridges' character, was particularly great. That is a standout theme from the film. He debuted that theme like a year ago now. It was a good while ago he debuted that theme, and so it's been out there for a while, but the way it's used in the film I think is particularly great. And I really like the John Williams musical score. And I'm just happy that we have another John Williams Indiana Jones score. That is the thing I'm happy about the most. The fact that we have another John Williams Indiana Jones score. And also, I'm very happy the fact that I really liked this film. And listen, maybe I liked it because I'm a huge Indiana Jones fan. I've spoken about my love of Indiana Jones at length on this channel. I've spoken about my love of Last Crusade, which in my opinion is a perfect movie, and still today is my favourite movie of all time. You know, I've spoken about my love of that movie continuous on this channel. I spoke about my love of Temple of Doom on this channel. I spoke about my love of Raiders on this channel. I spoke about my love of those original 3 Indiana Jones movies to death on this channel. I still will in the future. And even Crystal Skull, I think, has its moments. And so maybe I did like this movie because I'm an Indiana Jones fan, and because I have so much invested in this character and invested in his relationship with other characters, and because I had so much invested in this film as well. You know, you saw how excited I was for it on this channel. So maybe I like this movie because I'm an Indiana Jones fan. Maybe that's why. And to be honest, I don't have a definitive reason there. I'm not saying that definitively. You know, I'm generally saying maybe that's why I love this movie. I haven't really thought about it, but there's a good chance that I love this movie just because I'm an Indiana Jones fan. And there's also a good chance that if you're just a general fan of the Indiana Jones franchise, that you won't enjoy this film. You might be taken aback by it. You might not really like some decisions it makes, and especially when it gets towards the end, you might be taken out of the movie. But the ending although it makes some bold decisions, I still didn't really care about that because I thought it all worked. And I thought it made sense with Indiana Jones' character, and I liked it more than anything because it felt like a good old man Indiana Jones movie, and I mean that in the best way possible. It was a good old man Indiana Jones movie, and that's probably why I don't think it's great either, because I don't think you could do a great old man Indiana Jones film, a great old indie movie. But I also think this is the best one you could have made. I think James Mangold did the best job he could, considering Harrison Ford is at the age he's at, and considering how old the Indiana Jones character is meant to be in this movie. When you consider all those elements, this is probably the best movie you could have got, in my opinion. And, it's not great, but it's good enough. It's a good end to the Indiana Jones character and his story, and, yeah. Here's what I'm going to say. It feels like an episode of the Young Indiana Jones show. Yes, he's not young in this film. It's not young Indiana Jones. He's not played by Sean Patrick Flannery. But it feels like if there was an extended episode to see where Indy was at all these years later, at the end of the Young Indiana Jones series, this is what it would be. That's what it feels like. And I'm saying that in a really good way because I love the Young Indiana Jones series, maybe because I grew up watching it continuously alongside the original 3 Indiana Jones films, or more Temple of Doom and Last Crusade, but I really love the Young Indiana Jones series, and this feels like an episode of the Young Indiana Jones show. Just change it to Old Indiana Jones show, you know what I mean? That's what it feels like, because in the Young Indy series, you don't have him doing a lot of, action sequences, but there are action sequences in the Young Indy series, and you do see him going on adventures, and that's what you have in this film. There's not loads of action sequences, but you do see him on adventures, and, there is a great sense of adventure in this movie. It is full of joy in some parts. It also does get a bit deep and a bit dark in some moments, and I like that as well. I'm just happy I enjoyed the film. I enjoyed this movie, and I need to think about it more before I give my spoiler review. Maybe I'll see it a third time before I actually do my spoiler review. But as of now, as of my first review of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, I liked it. I didn't love it, and a part of me wishes that I did. But I also just want to say that my expectations were unreal going into this movie, and not all my expectations were met. But the movie, I went to this film expecting one film, and that's not the film I ended up getting. But the film I got, the more I think about it, the more I liked it, the more I enjoyed it. And I've been rambling on about this movie for about half an hour now, apparently, according to my audio recording. So I'm going to round things off. I enjoyed the film. If you're an Indiana Jones fan, I think you'll like it. I mean, I can't guarantee that, but I think you will. And it has an interesting MacGuffin. I like the idea of the MacGuffin. Not sure if it's totally well executed, the whole idea of the dial, but I'll get onto that a bit later. I'll get onto that in a future podcast when I talk about this film in spoilery terms. But also, I enjoyed the side characters that Indy went on his adventure with. I thought they were good characters. I really like the performances. Harrison Ford is great in this movie. It's got a great John Williams musical score. It's a fun adventure film, and it's a good end to the Indiana Jones franchise. In fact, it's a real end. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, like I said before, feels like this weird fever dream of what an old Indiana Jones movie, is. And then you get to this film, and it feels like what a real Indiana Jones movie is. You know what I mean? Crystal Skull feels like a weird fever dream, whilst this film feels like Indy has woken up from that fever dream and he's in reality. And that is what I liked about it. It felt real. It felt like this is where the Indiana Jones character would be at in his life. And I was invested in it, I was engaged in it, and I enjoyed it. And it worked for me. Yeah. And I'm really happy it did. I'm so happy it did, because it was my most anticipated film of the year. And I had a good time with this one. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, I'm going to say, as for now, and I might change my rating in a future review of this movie, but as of now, I'm going to say that it's a 7 out of 10. Now, that is much lower than I rated any of the previous three Indiana Jones movies, or any of the original three Indiana Jones movies, should I say, but it's much higher than I rated Crystal Skull. And this film is definitely better than Crystal Skull. I think Crystal Skull has a lot of miscalculated moments and is just a bit strange when you think about it. It's not, like I said before, it feels like a weird fever dream. But this movie, although it's not as good as Raiders, Temple of Doom, or Last Crusade for me, I enjoyed it a lot. Still, I really enjoyed it though. And I think it's, as of now, the fourth best Indiana Jones movie. And I think it's miles ahead of Crystal Skull, though. And I don't think it's that far behind Temple of Doom. But the thing is, though, it was never going to surpass my love of those original three Indiana Jones movies. Because I've seen Raiders so many times since I fell in love with it about 6-7 years ago now. And I've seen Temple of Doom way too many times. And I've seen Last Crusade way too many times as well. So it's never going to surpass my love of those three films. So it's never going to surpass the original three Indiana Jones movies in my ranking. But the fact that I still liked it though, even though I had these unreal expectations going into it, says a lot. And so it's a 7 out of 10, but it's a good 7 out of 10. It's a good 7 out of 10, and you know what? In a week's time, it might be a 7.5 out of 10, or it might be a 7.5 out of 10 by the time I get to my next review of this film, by the time I talk about it in spoilery details. But as of now, I liked it. Yes, when I'm talking about my first thoughts of the film, I enjoyed it. It's got some really great moments. It is verging on greatness, but it doesn't quite get there. But I love how it approached the idea of Indy being at this age, and I thought it worked for what it was. James Mangold did a good job, not a great job, but yeah, I thought that it was a good film. I enjoyed it. Yeah, I know I've said that before, but I just want to say it again. Ooh, I'm so happy I did enjoy it, because yeah, I don't think people quite realise how long I've been waiting for this film. I've been basically waiting for it for 15 years, and it's finally here, and it's good enough. That's where I'm going to leave it for right now. That's where I'm going to leave this podcast today. It's good enough. But I do have some problems with it, which I'll talk about in my spoiler review. But it's good enough, and so for me, as of now, I'm going to say that Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is a 7 out of 10 from me. Anyway, guys, that's it for the podcast today. My spoiler review of this film will be coming out within the next couple of days, and I'll be talking about some of the bigger plot points in this movie in that review, and it'll probably be quite a long podcast at that as well. But for now, I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and I hope you enjoyed hearing about my thoughts on Dial of Destiny. And if you've seen the movie, if you've seen the movie, then do let me know your thoughts on the film in the comment section below if you're watching on YouTube or whatever else. If you're listening to this, I don't know if you can, if you're listening to this, but if you can, let me know your thoughts on the movie in the comment section below. And also, if you haven't yet, please click down below and like, subscribe on this podcast. I look forward to seeing many more podcasts coming very soon on this channel. Thank you so much for watching or listening, and I will see you guys again soon. Should I wear it? Should I wear it, or should I leave it to you? You know what? I'm going to wear it just for the end of the podcast. I'm going to wear it more probably in my next review of Dial of Destiny, but I wanted to stick on the Indiana Jones hat just for the end of this podcast today. Thank you as always for watching or listening, and I will see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye.